Hi, welcome back to the third instalment of Introduction to Synte, live coding synthesis-based language and environment. It's been a little while, about 6 months. Life got a little bit busy for various reasons, and I'm back, and as promised, I believe, I'm gonna talk about the sample playback in Synte. Now, I haven't actually listened back to previous videos I've made, so I might end up repeating myself if you're watching like all three in one go, but I guess, you know, repetition isn't such a bad thing. I mean, that's what, you know, audio is all about, repetition, I guess. So and I'm going to try and keep this fairly short and sweet, so I'm just going to start typing out. It literally takes about, well, exactly 4 lines to play a sample back, and oops. So I've just typed 3 lines there. WAV-R is a kind of built-in constant, which means that for the given sample time, which is set at 4 seconds, so the WAVs that you put in the folder, which I'll explain in a bit, it only loads the first 4 seconds of each WAV. Like, that's by design. I'll talk about that in a bit. And then you can see in the next line there's an OSC function, which generates a simple ramp waveform, which is used to scan through the WAV operator, which you could think of as a bit like a kind of wave table. So it's scanning through from 0 to 1, and at 0 it's the first sample. At, like, say 0.5, it's halfway through all the way up to 1, and then it'll, because it's this ramp waveform, it'll loop back to the beginning again. So you could, in theory, have it so it just plays through it once using the once function, which is a ramp that goes up to 1 and then just stays there. Anyway, let's see if this is going to work. So you should be hearing a little loop there. This is Kevin McLeod, I'm not sure how to say his name exactly, but I might have his name completely wrong. I'll try to remember to put links to the description, but it's a copyright-free MP3 that's widely used on YouTube. You might recognise it, because I didn't want to get a copyright strike on this channel without really knowing all the ins and outs of that. So let me just pause that. So we've demonstrated sample playback. Now, so like I said, you could play through that just once, and then each time you kind of trigger it when you want it to play. I've not really been doing that much so far. I've just been looping things and then building things on top of that. But one really cool thing that I discovered that I hadn't really anticipated being able to do is time stretching. Now, while I'm recording this, my brain will probably turn to mush and I'll forget how to do it. But it goes something like this, where you start off scanning through the WAV, but what I'm going to do is this mod. I'm going to do mod 0.1, which is 1/10 of 4 seconds. You do the math. So if you just typed WAV now, it would just play that first 1/10 of 4 seconds that just loop that round. But what we're going to do is do an out, just send it single signal R. Now we want to do another WAV R, but this time we're going to divide it by 10, and normally this would result in like a really slow WAV playback, but we're going to add in that R that we created earlier. So what you get is a kind of a little ramp like teeth of a saw on top of a bigger ramp. So the actual kind of angle of that ramp, the kind of rate of playback is closer to what you'd expect. It's just kind of skipping forward and back, and then it's kind of gradually working its way through the sample. So let's see if I've got this right. Ooh, I can never type that in. I'm going to mute, well, as I launch this, I'll mute the other one as well. So that doesn't sound very much like time stretching, because we've actually we're using like quite a big chunk of the sound to loop. But what I'm going to do is just mute that, and I'm going to play you just a pitched down version. So this is kind of like just the second half of that one I just typed in. And this is like pitched down ridiculously slow. So maybe better demonstration would be to just do a kind of half speed. WAV-R, by the way, because it's 4 seconds, it's 0.25 hertz. I'm not going to explain that because I'll just confuse myself. So now you get like, this is an octave below the original playback, and it's twice as fast. So let's just mute that. Excuse me. And we'll do time stretching again, but this time we will choose a different mod constant. So what we want is actually something like this, I think. Let's see. Now, obviously that's really kind of low quality time stretching, but you can actually kind of, do things to improve that. You can try different things, like by having, instead of a ramp wave for the initial kind of the first OSC, replace it with a triangle. Then what it will do is it will play it forward and then in reverse, which can make it sound slightly smoother, but it can also make it blur things a little bit. You can also do 2 time stretchings at once where you have them out of phase with each other, so while one is kind of skipping back to the beginning, the other one's halfway through, so it kind of smooths out the kind of jumps and that kind of flangey sound. There's other things you can do to create more sophisticated time stretching as well. But what's really cool is that you can, if you want to, you can cook your own, but also you can kind of manipulate different parameters in time with other things that are going on, and kind of really integrate it into the programming. So I'm going to do that one again, but this time I'm going to not do it quite as slow. I'll do like a half speed one again. Now, for the kind of eagle-eared listeners out there, you might notice that it's not quite the correct pitch, because I haven't the way I've just directly summed the 2 oscillators together, the 2 ramp waves, instead of kind of weighting them so they add up to the same thing eventually. I won't go into too much detail about that, but that is contained in the documentation in the time stretching example. So going back to WAVs, if you look inside the kind of root directory of what you're running Synte from, there should be a folder which I'll just called WAVs, and my directory might differ from your directory, by the way, because it's got all other kinds of junk and stuff in it. So inside that WAVs folder or directory, if you put your just normal WAV files, should be able to load 16, 24 and 32-bit, and like any sensible sample rate. What it doesn't do is convert sample rates to the kind of the rate that Synte is running at. So if it's at 48 kilohertz at the moment. If you had a sample, these are all samples at 44.1, I think, and so by default they're not actually playing at the correct pitch, which you can do actually in Synte. So when you play it back, you just speed it up or slow it down by the right amount, and it should, if you really want it to be at the kind of original pitch. So these WAVs, I think you can have up to 12. I did put a cap on it. they're automatically loaded from that folder when Synte starts up, and you can see at the top there that it says WAVs, and it's got 3 WAVs. One isn't copyright free, so I'm not going to play that one, and the local 2 is, I think it's a slightly more chopped up version at a different format, just for testing purposes. So that's the basics of sample playback. It does get more interesting and fun like that than that, but like I said, I want to keep this fairly short and sweet, and so I'll leave it there, and hopefully you'll see some more videos soon.